Hey Tahita. So the one you sent me is 3e to the x equals 6 minus e to the negative x. And I just want to start by saying this is probably the hardest problem that we worked on all year. In my example video that I sent you, I show you this exact example, except instead of this being a 3, it's a 2. So if you want to see me work this out one more time, check out that video I sent you in the email prior to this one. But 3e to the x equals 6 minus e to the negative x. I want to start by rewriting e to the negative x as, let me start over. I kind of crammed myself. I want to start by rewriting e to the negative x as 1 over e to the x. So to make that a positive exponent, I put it 1 over e to the x. And now I don't like dealing with fractions, so I'm going to multiply everything by e to the x to cancel it out, to cancel out my fraction over here. So if I'm dividing by e to the x and multiplying by e to the x, that cancels. I have e to the x and e to the x, so that kind of gives me 3e to the x squared, and that's just a different way of thinking about it. But I have 2e to the x's, so I have e to the x squared. And then now I have 6e to the x minus 1. So I'm going to move the 6e to the x and the negative 1 to this side. And when I do that, I have 3e to the x squared minus 6e to the x plus 1. I moved the 6e to the x and the negative 1 to this side. So it became negative 6e to the x and it became a positive 1. So that's equal to 0. This is the most confusing part about this. We have to use something called U substitution. So what I have here is a quadratic equation, but it doesn't look like a quadratic equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let e to the x equals u. I'm sorry, I got something in my throat. Hang on. Okay, so e to the x is going to equal u. And instead of e to the x, I'm going to rewrite it as 3u squared minus 6u plus 1 equals 0. So now it looks a little bit more like a traditional quadratic equation, where my b is equal to negative 6, my a is equal to 3, and my c is equal to positive 1. So what I want to do is plug those into the quadratic formula. I'm going to slide the paper up. So I have negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4 times my a times my c all over 2 times a. Alright, so a negative and a negative give me a positive 6 on the outside, plus or minus square root. I need to plug all this in the calculator. So I have negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. That gives me 24. I don't know if you can see that with the glare. That gave me 24. So I have the square root of 24 all over 6. The square root of 24 can be rewritten to 4 goes into 24 4 times 6. So the square root of 4 is 2. So it's going to be 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 6 all over 6. And then if I look at my outside numbers, 6, 2, and 6, they have a common factor of 2. So I divide all those by 2, so I get 3 plus or minus the square root of 6 over 3. So that's my answer, but what I just found was u. And I didn't want u, I'm looking to solve for x the whole time. So I know that e to the x equals u. So now I have e to the x equals 3 plus the square root of 6 over 3. And if I want to solve this, I just take the natural log of both sides. So when I take the natural log of both sides, that'll give me x natural log of e equals natural log of 3 plus the square root of 6 over 3. Natural log of e cancels, and I was able to move my x to the front. That's how my x got down here. So I just have x equals natural log 3 plus the square root of 6. My pen doesn't want to write over 3. So I'm going to type that in my calculator. Natural log of, on top, 3 plus the square root of 6. And hopefully you can see me typing this. So up top I got 3 plus the square root of 6. I do have to put the top part of my fraction in parentheses. So I have 3 plus the square root of 6, and then I'm going to divide by 3. And that gives me 0.5969. So depending on how they tell you to round, that would be 0.597 for that answer. But I've only done the plus, so now I need to do the same thing with the minus. So it's going to be x equals natural log, my pen will not write, 3 minus the square root of 6 over 3. So I do the same exact thing, except this time I have a minus sign. I know you can't see. I'm going to change that plus to a minus. So minus, and I press enter, and I get negative 1.695. And when I round that to 3 decimal places, I get 1.696. So those would be my 2 possible answers for this problem. All right, hope this helps.